I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about the installation process and my initial impressions of the new Apex forward set flat face trigger for the Walther PPQ. So first thing we're going to have to do is tear down the PPQ and prep it for receiving the new Apex trigger. Today I'm going to be using my Walther PPQ M2. This is a 9mm 4-inch variant. I use this for IDPA CCP's new division. It just barely meets all the requirements. I have Talon grips on it and Springer Precision base plate for those who are interested. Sights are Dawson Precision. So first step in tearing down the PPQ, we're going to remove the magazine and check the chamber, see that it is clear, and it is. After clear, we're going to dry fire the gun and remove the slide. Take the slide and the magazine, set these both aside. We won't need these anymore. Alright, now that we have just the frame here, the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to have to grab a roll of tape. This is helpful if you don't have an armorer's block. An armorer's block will work just fine. And we're going to go ahead and remove the ambidextrous slide stop by punching out this pin right here. So I'm going to grab a punch real quick and my mallet over here. With my frame up here on my roll of tape, I'm just going to drive this pin out. Alright, got it started. Alright, go ahead and pull out your slide stop. Both sides. And it's out. Again, set that to the side, we'll get back to that. Next step, we're going to have to remove our takedown catch right here so that we can get to the pin that is holding the barrel lock in place here, and take that out. So you kind of want to pop that lever out of the way. It can be a bit of a pain. Flathead screwdriver can help. And it's off. Keep in mind that the two notches in this piece right here face the rear of the gun when reassembling. Now we have access to that pin that I was referencing earlier, and we'll just go ahead and push that through. Be very careful because your piece here, I want to get the name right, the barrel lock is under spring pressure, so just keep that in mind and be careful. And just fell through. There's the barrel lock pin. Again, set to the side, we'll get back to that. And you'll want to, as you're drawing your punch out, hold down on your barrel lock so that it doesn't go flying across the room. There it is. Go ahead and remove your barrel lock, and there is the spring that I was referencing. The next thing that we have to do now that we have the barrel lock out of the way is we have to drive out this small roll pin here, which holds in the locking block. So I'm going to grab a starter punch here real quick and just go ahead and get that started a little bit. This can be the hardest pin to drive out, so just keep that in mind. And don't be afraid to give this guy a little bit of force. Like I said, it is tough, but it will go. So I grabbed a real hammer, and we're making some progress here. Like I said, that pin can be the toughest in this whole procedure. Alright, pin is out. Just grab some pliers to go ahead and yank it out the other side over there. Again, we can go ahead and set that to the side. We won't be needing that until reassembly. The next step is we're going to go ahead and remove our locking block right here. It sits directly above the trigger. Again, the locking block can be a little bit tough to remove. Like I said, guys, again, the locking block can be a little bit tough to remove, but just keep at it, and it will come right out with those pins removed. And there we have it. There is our locking block removed. Alright, the last pin that we're going to have to drive out here is going to be this pin right here at the rear of the grip. And again, I will go ahead and grab a punch, a hammer or a mallet, something to drive it through, and just tap it on through. We're just about out. Once again, I'll go ahead and grab my pliers here. Just kind of help that pin move the last little bit out. Keep in mind that you do have a spring located right here on the side of your frame. That is for your magazine catch, your slide catch. So just something to be mindful of. Watch out for it. Just don't want to lose track of it or bend it up. Lastly, we're going to go ahead and remove our sear housing back here. Something else to watch out for is you have this little arm right here that runs along the side of the sear housing. That's your adjustable trigger bar guide. That piece is loose in there, so just watch out for that as you remove your sear housing. Just be mindful of how it sets in your sear housing, and yeah, just watch out for that. It can fall out on you. So here we have our sear housing with our adjustable trigger bar guide out of the frame right there. That's the adjustable trigger bar guide that I was referencing, and there's your sear guide. Only other thing we really have left in this frame is the trigger itself. Second, we will compare this with the Apex unit, but this is what you're going to find stock, and this is the piece that you will be replacing. Nothing else will be replaced with the Apex unit, but just go ahead and set this off to the side, store it somewhere, because we won't be needing this anymore. Again, fully stripped lower. Alright, so here we have the Apex trigger, and again, this is an early sample. It should be a production variant, I'm not 100% sure, but obviously this will not be the actual packaging that they come in when you yourself buy them. So open it up here, and there you have it. All that's included, as far as I can tell, or at least in my sample, is going to be your physical trigger itself, with the trigger bar attached to it. From what I've been told, this is a Walther trigger bar that Apex has sourced, and they have done some modification to it. This is not something that they've fabricated. So here we have our stock trigger and trigger bar out of the PPQ, and take a quick look at it. Not too much to see here really. And here is the Apex trigger. You're seeing it just as I'm seeing it for the first time. Yeah, it looks good. We've got trigger here, flat face trigger, still retain the Glock-esque trigger safety, and the trigger is metal over the plastic in the stock, and as you can see, you've got a little bit different grind right there. See if I can notice any quick differences just from eyeballing the two here. It looks like the Apex trigger sits a little bit farther forward on the trigger bar itself, which would account for the shorter take up that they claim to have delivered. Also of note, some people were curious if this came with springs or something like that to reduce the pull, and from what I've been told, this is not intended to reduce the pull weight on the Walther PPQ, which is already pretty light. This is just intended to reduce your pre-travel, also known as take-up, and give you a shorter reset. The only spring that you really have in the Walther PPQ trigger mechanism, as you might well know, is this spring right here located on top of the sear housing. This is your trigger return spring, and you can swap that out if you want. There's actually a guide that I have found online about swapping this out to try to reduce your pull weight. And if you feel like you absolutely have to get a lighter trigger pull and you'd like to experiment with swapping out that trigger return spring, you can buy this Everbuilt spring kit from the Home Depot. I believe it's about $3 or so, and in here they have all sorts of various springs, 84 springs in total, several of which will fit right here in your sear housing and are a lighter weight than this trigger return spring here and will reduce your trigger pull. So just a quick note for those of you that want an actual lighter trigger pull. Alright, so let's get right to it. Let's go ahead and reassemble this thing. Go ahead and set off to the side your stock trigger and trigger bar. You're going to need your frame, your sear housing, and your trigger to start off with. Go ahead and place your trigger right down in the slot where it goes. Then you're going to set your back arm of your trigger bar up through the sear housing and latch that arm right onto your trigger return spring. Right like that. At this point, maintaining that spring on your trigger arm, just go ahead and slide your sear block right back down into your frame. The next thing that you're going to want to do is reinstall this roll pin at the rear. If you remember when we disassembled, we ended up with 2 roll pins. They are in fact different lengths. It's pretty easy to tell. And your shorter roll pin goes in the rear of the receiver here. Let's go ahead and set that in there. We'll grab our roll of tape again, set the frame up on there, grab a starter punch and hammer real quick just to get this guy started. And we'll swap it out for a punch and drive this guy home. And you just want to check every time you put a pin back in that it's kind of even on both sides. It's not sunk in farther on one side or another. And that looks pretty good to me. Up next is going to be our locking block. Making sure that that spring for the slide stop is still in place. We're just going to go ahead and slide our locking block right back down into the frame here. And it's in. Up next is the roll pin for the locking block. That is the longer roll pin I talked about. And that roll pin goes in that front hole right there. So once again, I'll grab a starter punch just to kind of get that pin started in there. And double check to make sure everything's lined up. And it is. So I will grab a punch and drive this guy home. Remember, this pin can be really tight, so just go ahead and don't be gentle with it. Alright, we're in there, just going to check to make sure, and we're just about flush there. I can accept that. Up next, we're going to place our barrel lock back into our locking block, right there in that hole. And if you remember, the barrel lock does have a spring, so make sure not to forget that. Go ahead and get the spring down in that hole, and the barrel lock on top of it. Now guys, the orientation of the barrel lock is as such. You want this flat portion on the barrel lock to be facing the rear. So I'm going to go ahead and stick a punch through the center of the barrel lock here to keep that lined up while I get this double-headed pin that goes through the center of it. A little trick, just kind of push the punch back through with the pin, and that way you'll keep everything lined up. There we have it. Pin is centered with the head sticking out on either side of the frame. So we'll grab our takedown lever here. Again, you want the two notches to face rearwards upon reassembly. And we'll just kind of get that oriented the way we want it. And snap it over those pins. Remember, we used flathead before, just to kind of help us scoot this over those pins there. Another thing you can do is kind of push one pin off to the side. Get that where you need it. Push your pin back through, ensuring that it's lined up on one hole. And then just snap it over. There we have it. Takedown lever is in place. The last thing we have to do when reassembling the frame here is to reinstall the ambidextrous slide stop. And first I'm going to put this side in. You have a little arm that fits into a recess. Pretty easy. It can only go in there one way. So just kind of tuck that arm up under there first. Next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the hole in your new Apex trigger is properly aligned where this ambidextrous slide stop will go through it and hold it in place. So, about right there. And might have to wiggle it a little bit to kind of get it lined up right. I'll try my trick here with the punch. Just kind of get it lined up. Alright, so we've got our ambidextrous slide lever started here. Last thing you want to look out for is this spring that we've talked about before. And you're going to want to get your spring elevated a little bit before you kind of push that last little bit in on your slide stop so that that spring sits atop this side of your ambidextrous slide stop. The slide stop is keyed, so it can only go in one way. So just kind of line it up right there. As you can see, it's keyed right there. Line it up, press it home, ensure that it's got the spring you want. So we've got it all back together, cleaned up a little bit. And the last step we're going to go ahead and do is just take our slide and slap it right back down onto our little receiver. And there it is, we're back together. So let's go ahead and see how this trigger is, what everybody's curious to know. So you retain that Glock-esque safety right there in the middle. And there's your take up right there. Break. There's not a whole lot of movement there. And your reset right there. break, reset, take up, break. That's it. It's a little bit awkward for me. I am a lefty, so bear with me. Here I have, for comparison's sake, another 4-inch PPQ. This one happens to be the M1 with the paddles here, as you see. Go ahead and ensure that that is clear. It is. Let's try this trigger out. So here we have our take up all the way back to the wall, break, reset, right there, break. One more time, reset, there's our take up right back to the wall, and break. This is a really good trigger, guys. There's nothing wrong with the stock PPQ trigger. But I will tell you what, this Apex trigger is fantastic. You certainly have less pre-travel and a much shorter reset. If you're a competition shooter or you just want to shoot groups at the range, this is the trigger for you. It's a great upgrade, especially for the money. From what I can tell, sitting here behind the guns, the pull weight seems to be about the same between the Apex and your stock trigger, which is what they've advertised it should be. Again, no need to change it. It's already right at about 4.5 pounds. You don't need to go any lighter, and if you do feel like you need to, there are options, as I've discussed. So again, I'm super happy with this trigger. It is great. It's just what I was looking for. I use this PPQ for IDPA's CCP division, their compact carry pistol, which does allow for this modification. Again, this might not be allowable for every sport and or every division, so check your rules, but if you can have it or you just think you want to, certainly go ahead, pick it up. It's great. In the very near future, I'm going to get this gun out at the range and put some rounds through it. I'll take camera along with me. I will get the 4-inch I have here out to the range and put some rounds through it. Also, Apex has claimed that this trigger will fit in the M1s and the M2s. I may try it in that M1. They've claimed it will fit in the 4 inches, the 5 inches. I do have a 5-inch 9mm that I can try it in. And they've also claimed that it will fit in the 40s and the 45s. While I don't have any 40s, I do have a 45 that I will put one of these in very soon. So definitely watch for that. I'll let you know how it goes, and I will keep you posted. So stay tuned.